that we can't lose our whole country. We're having an economic collapse. I'm also a small businessman. I understand it. And I talk with business people all the time, Tucker. And my heart is lifted tonight by what I heard the president say, because we can do more than, one thing at a time. We can do two things. So, my message is that let's get back to work. Let's get back to living. Let's be smart about it. And those of us who are 70 plus, we'll take care of ourselves, but don't sacrifice the country. Don't do that. Don't ruin this great American dream.
So you're basically saying that this disease could take your life, but that's not the scariest thing to you. There's something that would be worse than dying.
Yeah. And look,
So guys, what you just heard there was Tucker Carlson earlier tonight on Fox News, and he was interviewing Dan Patrick, who is the Lieutenant Governor of Texas. And Dan Patrick, like a lot of Republicans today, including President Trump, is starting to suggest that we should put jobs, profits, the economy ahead of senior citizens and other vulnerable people in this particular crisis. And that is an absurd point of view. It should be remembered, folks, that it was Republicans, including the president and many congresspeople and senators, just over a week ago, who were saying that this current crisis was little more than a hoax, something cooked up by Democrats and the liberal elite media to hurt the president and hurt Republicans in the November elections, and that it was something that we really didn't have to worry all that much about. And a few days passed, and when the crisis became unavoidable, when even the most ardent Trumpists couldn't deny the reality anymore, they pivoted and they started to look like they gave a damn about the crisis. And right now, less than a week after that, the Republicans, at least a lot of them, are back on this idea that the current medical issues are not that big of a deal, and that within a couple weeks or less, we should return to normal. We should have people go back to their jobs. We should have people go back to their daily routines, because the alternative is harming the economy, putting people's lives and dignity and security, again, seniors and the vulnerable, ahead of the economy isn't something we can do for more than a few days, and we should be willing to put them on the altar. Put them on the altar of capitalism and make them a sacrifice, because they would be willing to do it. And that's what Dan Patrick is saying, that for their grandkids, older folks, working people would be willing to go to their jobs and put themselves at risk for the economic health of the United States. I don't know if he's spoken to regular working class people, but most of them who I've spoken to and I've heard about in reporting are absolutely terrified about going to work and don't want to go, but are often forced to because they have no other means of supporting themselves. And it's awfully rich for someone of means, someone of power like Dan Patrick, to say that he would be willing to take this risk, because it's almost certainly poorer people, marginalized people, working class people who will bear this risk, and their family members. It's not him that will bear the risk. It's senior citizens who depend on their children and grandchildren, and who, when they go to work, will increase their risks in turn. This is a demonstration that the Republican Party doesn't care about working class people. And you know me on this channel as a Bernie Sanders supporter. I am very critical of the Democratic Party. I am very, very critical. In a lot of cases, I feel that they also don't give a damn about working class people. But in this particular moment, there's real clarity. You're only seeing this sort of denial of basic reality from Republicans, from Trump supporters, from these sorts of hyper-capitalists that want to put getting people back to their jobs ahead of building a safer society. That is unacceptable for a party that claims to care about regular folks, that claims to be the antithesis of the out-of-touch coastal liberal elite. It's unacceptable to see, guys. And you can hear Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson is not a liberal. He's not left-leaning. He's not a democratic socialist like myself. He's on Fox News, and he's a right-leaning guy. And he is almost, incredulous at hearing this because he realizes that it sounds ridiculous. That working class people, whether or not they support Trump or whether or not they support Biden or Bernie or whether or not they identify as capitalists or another ideology, realize that this is serious stuff they're dealing with. And they need to be supported during this really challenging time. And these are not regular times. And they won't be regular times 2 weeks from now. Dr. Anthony Fauci, who Donald Trump seemingly made disappear today from his recent press conference, but he's been at most of them, has been very clear that this is something that could take months. And many other governments here in Canada and all over the world are saying that this is something that will be measured in months and not weeks, meaning that sending people back to work in a couple of weeks is not tenable, and it is grossly irresponsible, and it endangers those workers and everyone those workers will come into contact with, again, including seniors, including the immune deficient. It is a disaster waiting to happen. This is something that we really have to put some perspective on. The Olympics just got postponed until 2021, and the Olympics were not scheduled until later on in the summer, July, I believe. Right? Like, the reality is that major events months from now are being canceled because there's no confidence this situation will be better in weeks. If people thought that, they wouldn't have canceled the Olympics at all. People thought this would be done in April or May even. This is a long-haul issue, and if we don't make it one, it will be a disaster. And Republicans are either denying that this is a big deal at all in the first place, which is something they've done at least last week, the 2 weeks before, or they're saying that we understand this is a big deal, and we don't care how many working-class people, how many vulnerable people lose their lives.